They say that if you stand alone in the great hall of Chillingham Castle and listen closely around midnight, you can still hear it. A distant scream, a cry that isn't quite human, a sound that crawls under your skin, half echo, half memory, as if the castle itself remembers the pain. This isn't folklore. This isn't a ghost story made for tourists. Grit, because Chillingham Castle, in the quiet countryside of Northumberland, England, was built on real suffering, and the walls still hold its truth. Chillingham Castle looks majestic from the outside, a medieval fortress with stone towers and creeping ivy, nestled in the foggy green hills near the Scottish border, but behind that beauty lies one of Britain's most disturbing histories of torture, war, and silence. Built in the 13th century, it served not only as a fortress during the border wars, it was also a prison, a place where captured Scots were brought, interrogated, and executed. The castle became a factory of screams, a perfect tool of fear in a time when cruelty was considered justice. Today, Chillingham stands open to the public. Tourists wander through its halls, cameras in hand, but many leave before finishing the tour. Some report faint cries coming from the dungeons. Some see shadows walking behind them. And some never talk about what they felt at all. This is not just a haunted castle, it's a place where the ghosts aren't trying to scare you, they're trying to be heard. The torture chamber of Chillingham Castle is unlike any other in Europe. Carved deep into the cold stone, it's small, damp, and without light. Chains hang from the ceiling. Rusted iron devices sit in corners, racks, spikes, and stretchers. All authentic, all once used on living people. Historical records mention a man named John Sage, a former soldier of King Edward I, known for his brutal methods. When peace was declared, he didn't stop. He became the castle's torturer, and for 3 years, he executed prisoners with unimaginable creativity, they say. He killed more than 7,000 men, women, and children within these walls, and he did it with pride. Locals called him the Butcher of Chillingham. He broke bones, burned skin, crushed fingers. His favorite sound was the moment a man's scream turned into silence. And yet, for John Sage, it wasn't madness, it was duty. He believed that fear could protect England's borders better than any sword. That's where the moral ambiguity begins. He saw himself as a patriot. His victims saw him as a monster. History never decided who was right, it only left the echoes. What happens to a place that absorbs so much pain? Does it become haunted because of spirits? Or because human cruelty never really disappears? Scientists who they studied Chillingham say the castle's stone walls are made of limestone, a material that can hold sound frequencies longer than average rock. Some believe the cries and wails people hear are not ghosts, but recordings of the past replaying themselves through time. Others believe that's just what the living tell themselves because the truth is harder to accept. A few paranormal investigators spent the night in the dungeon. They recorded sudden temperature drops, unexplained breathing near their microphones, and a whisper, soft, broken, almost pleading. Don't forget us. When you hear that voice, when you stand in the exact spot where someone once died in fear, it's hard not to feel something. Fear, sadness, maybe guilt, because we all share the same fragility. These were real people, men and women who once believed in tomorrow. And they died here, in the dark, without names, without justice. Their pain didn't fade with time. It lingered, waiting for someone to listen. One of the castle's guides once told a chilling story. During a renovation in the early 1900s, workers found a sealed chamber behind a wall. When they broke through, they discovered a tiny room, no door, no window, only bones chained to the floor, and nearby, the remains of a small child. No one could explain why the room was sealed, or who they were. The records were missing. But ever since that discovery, Visitors claim to hear two voices echoing in that area, a deep man's voice, and the faint cry of a child. It's as if they are trapped together forever, repeating their final moments. Every story told about Chillingham has documents, photos, or artifacts to back it up. The racks and cages you see today aren't movie props. They were recovered from the dungeon itself. You can still see the iron spikes darkened by what might once have been blood. Even skeptics admit that the castle has an undeniable inertia weight that makes the air feel thicker, heavier, harder to breathe. In interviews, several guests who spent a night in the castle experienced sleep paralysis, hearing footsteps, and the sensation of cold hands brushing their skin. One woman claimed she awoke to see a man in old armor standing by her bed. When she screamed, he disappeared, but her bedsheets were covered in soot, as if something had burned right where he stood. But the strangest thing happened not to tourists, not even to paranormal teams, but to the owners of the castle themselves. When Sir Humphrey Wakefield, the current owner, began restoring the castle in the 1980s, he tried to keep the darker stories out of the spotlight. He wanted Chillingham to be elegant, historical, not haunted. So, he ordered the old torture devices to be moved to a private section. That night, every motion detector in the castle triggered at once. Doors slammed, and one of his workers was found unconscious near the dungeon stairs, his arms marked with fresh bruises shaped like chains. Since then, no one moves the devices again. They stay exactly where they were left, untouched, waiting. And that's when the real investigation began. Because someone or something in Chillingham didn't want to be forgotten. If the dead could speak, what would they say to the living? They said the castle wanted to breathe again. That every time someone touched its walls, the air grew colder, as if the stones themselves remembered the blood. And if you listened long enough, you could hear footsteps coming from rooms that don't exist anymore. When the restoration began in the late 1980s, workers thought they were just fixing an old fortress. They didn't realize they were waking something up, sir. Humphrey Wakefield's dream was simple: turn Chillingham Castle into a place of beauty again. He envisioned light, art, and history, not terror. But the castle had other plans. Soon after construction started, strange things began happening. Tools vanished overnight. Cameras stopped working near the torture chamber. Workers heard muffled cries behind sealed walls. And one morning, they found wet footprints on a dry stone floor, leading straight toward a door that shouldn't have existed. Bricked-up archway buried under centuries of dust. When they tore it open, they found a room of shadows. The room was small, maybe 5 feet wide, 10 feet long, and completely black inside. No windows, no air, just a single wooden chair in the center. But the disturbing part wasn't the chair, it was what surrounded it. Scratches covering every inch of the wall, thousands of claw marks carved deep into the stone, as if someone had tried to dig their way out with bare hands. On the far side of the room, the workers discovered iron shackles still attached to the wall. They rattled when touched, even though no wind could reach them. And on the floor, a pile of white dust. At first, everyone thought it was plaster, until someone noticed a human tooth buried in it. The site was sealed within hours. No explanation, no official report. But whispers spread fast among the crew that the room wasn't empty at all. Records later showed that the area had once been part of the castle's interrogation wing. It was never meant to be found again. Architectural drawings from the 1600s referred to it simply as the Silent Room. There's no record of who was kept there, only that those sent in never came out alive. Some historians claim it was used to isolate prisoners before execution, a place designed not to kill the body, but the mind. Days in darkness, no sound, no sense of time, until reality itself started to bend. That kind of psychological torture leaves an imprint not just on the victims, but on the place that witnessed it. Imagine that kind of silence, complete isolation. No sunlight, no voice but your own thoughts. After a few hours, your brain starts filling the emptiness. You hear breathing that isn't there. You see shapes moving in the dark. You start to believe the darkness is alive. That's what the Room of Shadows does to people. Even now, modern investigators who enter say they feel watched, their hearts racing uncontrollably, their bodies reacting as if in danger, but no one knows why. One visitor described it perfectly. It felt like guilt, like the walls were judging me for being alive. And that's the strangest thing about Chillingham. It doesn't just scare you. It reflects you, your fears, your regrets, the parts of yourself you try to bury. They echo right back at you through the stone. Locals tell the story of the blue boy, a child spirit often seen in the castle's pink room. Guests have reported hearing a boy crying, followed by flashes of blue light near the bed. When renovations reached that area, builders broke through a wall and found the skeleton of a young boy dressed in torn blue clothing, buried next to fragments of metal armor. He wasn't a legend after all. He was real. For centuries, people dismissed his story as myth. But when they found him, many said the castle grew quiet, as if one restless soul had finally been heard. That's the emotional weight of Chillingham. Every ghost here has a history. Every whisper is someone's unfinished story. But here's where it gets complicated. John Sage, the torturer, was eventually captured by his own men. They chained him, beat him, and hanged him from a tree outside the castle gates. The villagers celebrated his death. But when you dig deeper, the story shifts. Some letters from that era suggest Sage wasn't the only one torturing prisoners. He was following orders. And after peace returned, the nobles needed a scapegoat. So they erased their names and left his plot. If that's true, then even the monster of Chillingham was just another victim, a tool of power, discarded when the killing stopped being useful. Maybe that's why his ghost still screams. Not out of cruelty, but because he was never forgiven. And that's where the castle's tragedy becomes human. In Chillingham, no one is purely innocent and no one is completely damned. Every story blurs the line between justice and vengeance. During one investigation, a historian named Catherine Gray stayed overnight in a room above the dungeon. She left a recorder running while she slept. At 2:14 a.m., she woke up to a freezing temperature and the sound of chains dragging. When she checked the recorder the next morning, the audio captured a man whispering, "You opened the wrong door." She never returned to Chillingham. To this day, no one knows which door he meant. The castle has dozens of hidden corridors, and several of them remain sealed, bricked up centuries ago. What if one of them still hides something? Or someone? Every artifact in Chillingham tells part of that mystery. The dungeon floor is worn smooth from centuries of struggle. The Iron Maiden still bears dents from fists pounding inside. When archaeologists scanned the sublevels, they found several empty cavities, voids, too small for rooms, too deep to reach without collapsing the foundation. Whatever lies beneath may never be uncovered. And maybe that's for the best, because Chillingham isn't just haunted by spirits, it's haunted by memory. And some memories are better left asleep. In 2001, a team of British archaeologists requested permission to explore the lower vaults to map the castle's ancient tunnels. The work began at dawn. By afternoon, the crew's radio went silent. When rescue workers reached them, they found their equipment scattered, lights broken, and one of the cameras melted as if exposed to extreme heat. The footage recovered from the remaining cameras showed something bizarre. A figure of light, bluish-white, shaped like a person standing at the end of a tunnel, motionless. Then, suddenly, the image distorted and the screen went black. Experts said it was lens flare, static, data corruption. But one technician noticed something else, a faint voice captured just before the feed cut off. He's still here. Was it the Blue Boy, John Sage, or something older, buried deeper than any record can explain? Whatever it was, the castle had spoken again, and this time it sounded angry. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories. There's something strange about silence in Chillingham Castle. It isn't the kind of silence that comforts. It's the kind that listens. Every stone here feels alive, as if the walls are holding their breath, waiting for someone to whisper the wrong word and wake what should never be awake. They say the dead here don't rest. They wait. And sometimes they remember you. When we last left off, we'd uncovered the terrifying stories of the Blue Boy, the dungeon of suffering, and the eerie footsteps echoing through the great hall. But tonight, as we return to Chillingham Castle, we go deeper into the parts that even the guides hesitate to enter after dark. Because beyond the public tours and polished floors, there are rooms still sealed shut, hidden passageways behind centuries-old walls, and voices faint, desperate calling from a time when mercy was a forgotten word. This isn't just about hauntings anymore. It's about the human soul, fractured and imprisoned by the horrors it endured. And the question we all fear to ask: what happens when pain refuses to die? If you stand in the courtyard of Chillingham Castle at midnight, the air feels heavier, thick, almost metallic. Some say it's the damp chill of the Northumberland air. Others insist it's something else, the residue of suffering, soaked deep into the soil. Historians discovered that during the 14th century, the castle's dungeon was used by John Sage, the sadistic torturer employed by King Edward I. For years, Sage's victims screamed through the stone corridors, their agony echoing across generations. When Sage was finally executed by the locals, burned alive on the castle grounds, witnesses claimed his screams matched perfectly with the cries of the people he once tortured. But here's the disturbing part. During paranormal investigations in recent years, visitors have reported hearing two overlapping screams, one male, one female, coming from the dungeon at the same time. It's as if Sage and one of his victims are locked in an endless cycle, forever reliving the moment of vengeance. One night, a historian and his crew set up thermal cameras in the torture chamber. Around 2:37 a.m., a shape appeared tall, hunched, moving slowly toward the iron rack. No living person was in that room, yet the sensors picked up a spike in temperature, not cold, but burning hot, almost as if the spirit wasn't a ghost at all, but the memory of fire itself. And the deeper you dig, the more unsettling it becomes. In one of the lower vaults, bones were found sealed behind the Walsmold bones. A child's, many believe. It's the real body of the so-called Blue Boy, whose spirit glows in the darkness. According to legend, when lightning flashes across the Northumberland hills, you can sometimes see him in the battlements, say, soft blue light trembling near the highest window. And if you look too long, he vanishes, hollow, only to reappear closer. It's easy to dismiss such stories as superstition, but the evidence is hard to ignore. Temperature drops, EMF spikes, and audio recordings capturing whispers saying, "Don't go." Each voice sounds fragmented, as if spoken through centuries of pain. But here's the question that haunts every investigator. Are these voices calling for help, or warning us to leave them alone? What makes Chillingham Castle truly horrifying isn't just the ghosts, it's what they represent. Each spirit here carries a piece of human darkness, anger, fear, guilt, and despair, emotions too strong to fade with death. Visitors have described feeling waves of sadness so intense that they break down crying without knowing why. Some even claim to hear their names whispered in Old English accents, voices filled with sorrow instead of menace. Maybe these entities aren't monsters. Maybe they're reminders. Reminders of what cruelty does to the human spirit, and how pain, once unleashed, never really disappears, it just changes form. John Sage, the torturer, is remembered as a sadist, a monster of history, but letters uncovered in a monastery suggest a disturbing twist. He might have been a broken soldier, traumatized from war, unable to stop reliving his violence. So the king turned his trauma into a weapon, giving him victims to satisfy his rage. Does that make him evil, or a product of evil? It's a question that lingers like smoke in these halls. The ghosts of Chillingham Dante offer easy answers, only the echo of human choices that went too far. And that's the true terror here, not what's supernatural, but what's painfully, tragically human. Before we end, there's one final story, one that even skeptics refuse to challenge. In 2003, a film crew spent the night in the castle's library, documenting paranormal claims. At 3:12 a.m., the cameraman whispered that someone was standing behind him. When they checked the footage, there was no one there. But in the reflection of the antique mirror stood a man in medieval armor, holding a rusted chain. The reflection blinked. Moments later, the power cut out across the entire castle, and when it returned, all the cameras had stopped recording, except one. That last camera captured something faint but chilling, a child's laughter, followed by a whisper. We never left. Even after centuries, Chillingham Castle stands as a monument to fear, power, and the things humanity tries to forget. Every shadow, every echo, every chill in the air, it's all part of a memory that refuses to die. And if you ever visit, remember this: you're not walking through a castle. You're walking through the aftermath of human cruelty frozen in time. So when the night grows still and the walls seem to breathe, don't ask if the ghosts are real. Ask if you would be able to rest after what happened here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow for more tales from the shadows.